most executives today are focused on how they de-risk their business in this evolving, fast-paced environment. It's almost the polar opposite of what many of us were taught early in our sales careers, which is the elevator pitch. There are times that technology becomes what I call a bush to hide behind. Technology can make you more efficient, but it doesn't do anything necessarily to focus on your effectiveness.
Welcome back to Talent Hunters, where we explore insights and trends shaping the global recruiting and staffing industry. Want to build talented teams that drive your company toward big goals and big growth? Then this podcast is for you. And now, let's join the conversation with today's episode of Talent Hunters, brought to you by HireQuest. Connect with us at hirequest.com.
This is Vince Holt, the host of Talent Hunters, and it is my pleasure today to have Julie Thomas, the president and CEO of Value Selling Associates, located in Charleston, South Carolina. 22 years of coaching and mentoring revenue leaders, as well as the author of The Power of Value Selling. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, Vince.
Well, we're going to do a deep dive in some different areas, but before we get started, what I'd really like to understand is, could you briefly describe what your mission is with Value Selling Associates?
Our mission with Value Selling Associates is to help individuals achieve results that they never thought were possible, and being the catalyst for that change and that spark within them.
So, in 22 years, now, I was a recruiter for 40 years, nearly 40 years. Obviously, we've seen peaks and valleys and everything that could go possibly right and wrong in the sales world. But lately, since the pandemic, we've run into a lot of interesting things that salespeople have to deal with. But the least of which, or not the least of which, is technology. Technology has skyrocketed in the last 3 or 4 years. What do you find is the biggest challenge with salespeople dealing with technology today?
Interesting question. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think if I go back to pre-pandemic, and it seems like our life has become this before the pandemic, after the pandemic kind of dichotomy. But if I go back to that, we were in a period of digital transformation. And what happened during the pandemic, out of necessity, was that was accelerated unbelievably. And it's the first time that I can recall that every industry, every geography, every corporation, no matter where you are, what you did, was facing the same set of macro challenges of how do we survive this? And technology became a key for that. Companies that didn't have a lot of technology or digital infrastructure, when their knowledge workers went home, they didn't know what was going on, and they had no way to manage and no way to set expectations. So, I think back to that time, I had one client that was just trying to help people buy office chairs and set up their home offices from that standpoint. So I think that the biggest challenge facing salespeople especially is there is so much technology today and so many different platforms that many organizations are using. And, we refer to it as the tech stack, but it's all these layers of different technologies that it is difficult for sales reps to really understand how technology fits into their workflow and becomes a tool and not a sinkhole. And I think there are some reps that are more comfortable, especially the younger generations, what we call the digital natives, that would rather have screen time than FaceTime. And that is a barrier to many sales reps. I hear it all the time when I talk to people. Oh, I'm going to send them a text. Why don't you pick up the phone and call them and have a conversation rather than a text or an email? And some of the sales reps will look at me like I'm from the Jurassic ages of, you want me to actually pick up the phone? No one answers their phone. And then they do it and they're shocked to find out that people still do answer their phones. So technology can enhance communication, but it often becomes a barrier to communication.
Gosh, I love hearing you talk like that, because it's been my experience, and I've watched a lot of my peers. Technology has been the easy path in their mind, as opposed to dealing with rejection verbally. And it chases a lot of people away from the phone. I hear the same thing. Nobody's answering their telephone. But then it becomes more about the message, in my opinion, of trying to leave a compelling message that causes somebody to have to call you back. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the challenge that most sales reps run into is they're doing outreach to discuss their solution. And I use solution broadly. Maybe it's a product, maybe it's a service, but they're doing outreach to say, hey, let me tell you about what I do and how great it is, because I know you're going to want some. And buyers don't care about your solution. What they care about is their problems, challenges, obstacles, and opportunities. And so when sales reps start to flip the script and do outreach about problems that they've solved for other customers that I would expect you, based on what I know about you, might also be facing, they have a better hit rate. There is no manager, executive, and I work mostly with B2B type firms, sitting around saying, gosh, I just hope a sales rep calls me today to talk about something I don't think I need. No one's sitting around waiting for that sales rep to call. As a matter of fact, they're trying to screen them out. But if somebody calls me to talk about a challenge that I'm facing in my business and share with me insight on how I might be able to quickly or easily overcome that, that's a meeting I'm willing to have. And so sales reps really need to learn how to flip that script and stop focusing on themselves and looking inward, and focus on the customers and the value and the outcomes and the problems they could solve for the customer.
So I don't want the next question to go political here. I'm using it as an example of what I've heard some complaints, concerns come across. But oh my gosh, tariffs have hit us, and nobody's wanting to hire people because of the tariffs. So if I take what you just suggested, if I talk to 3 or 4 people that are talking about the tariffs and how they're hitting it, I should be asking those people, so how are you dealing with that? Is that fair to ask?
I think that's an interesting conversation to have. I mean, what is happening right now in our macroeconomic environment is there's uncertainty. There's uncertainty with the tariffs. There's uncertainty when, if, how they're going to impact anything. And because of that, executives, I believe, are trying to de-risk their business in areas that they can control. What's one of the things I can control? Adding more headcount. So I think it's fair to understand that. And I've talked with executives in a multitude of industries, and they are focused on the de-risking aspect of their business, and no one knows what's going to happen, when it's going to start, or when it's going to stop. As a matter of fact, I had one executive ask me the other day, what am I doing it's probably a better question, am I anticipating that tariffs could impact intellectual property. I said, gosh, I haven't even thought about that. And then right after that, they started talking about tariffs on arts, the Hollywood, the artistic works coming from outside of the US. So, in situations where there are uncontrollables, I think businesses really try to focus on what they can control. And hiring is one of those. Training, quite frankly, is another one. It is often a variable expense that can be paused, just like travel or other expenses that in some cases might be considered variable, and they can put the stop on it very quickly.
So I want to use some of your verbiage in your approach to the relationship building of the conversation. So, and again, just using tariffs as an example, if I ask 1, 2, 3, 5 people how they're dealing with that, clients, now I can use your example of leaving a message. Hey, I've just spoken with 3 of your largest competitors about how they're dealing with their tariff issues today. Wanted to expose or discuss with you what they're doing. Please give me a call back, rather than what I'm trying to sell. Is that the approach you were talking about?
Yeah, we think it's more productive to focus the conversation on the challenges and the problems. Now, obviously, I'm trying to direct that to challenges and problems that ultimately my solution can address, right? So I'm not having a conversation about tariffs for tariff's sake. I'm having a conversation because in that situation, if I've got a solution that might add value to other areas of their business, I want to focus on how I can get their attention to drive that value or those business outcomes. Again, I think most executives today are focused on how they de-risk their business in this evolving, fast-paced environment. No one's going to argue that one of the things that has happened as a result of the technical and digital revolution that we're in, and now AI with this whole other thing, is the pace of change is so much more rapid than it was in previous decades. And adaptability and agility is critical for any business to survive today.
So as we're talking about human capital, because that's the profession a lot of our audience is in, we talked about the approach of talking about the problems that company might be having, but how do I transition from what I got them to call me back, with, pass on the solutions that I've heard from other clients or things that they're working on, getting into a discussion, which is relationship building on what they're doing with those things. What would you suggest would be a transition to making my solution of value, we're getting back to your company, of value to them?
So one of the tactics that we find is very effective in those scenarios is what we call establishing credibility with a value-based story. So if I'm calling on you, I might open that with a short, crisp story that talks about how I have worked with companies similar to you, solving problems that I anticipate you also have, and then identifying the outcomes or the measurable value that resulted in working with us. And as I tell that story, I then immediately transition. So can we talk about what's going on in your environment, in your world, in your company and see if there might be an opportunity to deliver similar outcomes to you. And I immediately transition to asking questions. And that is a great way to open a call. It's almost the polar opposite of what many of us were taught early in our sales careers, which is the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch was, the premise was, if you run into your ideal customer in an elevator, could you describe to them in the time it takes to go from the first floor to wherever you're going, what your company does in a way that would be compelling, intriguing, and entice them to engage? And it was very inward focused. We want to be outward focused. We work with customers like you, and they're faced with these challenges. And I highlight 2 or 3 of them. And if I've done my research, I'm highlighting challenges that I'm predicting will resonate with you. And then I'm going to say, and when they work with us, here's some of the outcomes they get. How about you? How are you dealing with these challenges? And I immediately transition to them, because selling isn't telling. And if I launch into that elevator pitch too quickly, I run the risk that you say, oh, yeah, I wasn't really thinking that training was the answer. Or I wasn't really thinking that adding new headcount was the answer. I was thinking about something else. And I give them a reason to discount and not even talk to us in the first place.
Very profound. Very profound. Going to take a step back, because since the pandemic, technology, as we discussed, is becoming more than a tool. And you use that word tool. And I just so believe in technology being a tool and not a solution. How do you coach salespeople, recruiters, they're all the same, to focus on it as a tool and not as the solution? Because the solution takes up your business time, or the tool takes up your business time if you focus on the tool all day long. Somehow we've got to use the tool during non-prime time and rely on what we know is successful in the conversations. Used to be maybe 10 calls to get a hold of somebody. Now it's 30 calls to get a hold of somebody. What is your advice for people to use technology as a tool as opposed to as the solution?
So, technology is a tool, or, Gartner, the consulting company, talks about technology as the teammate. Like, what are you delegating to technology? But technology does a couple things for you. Number one, it can automate the menial tasks that nobody wants to do. I have never met a sales rep who gets excited about data entry into their CRM system. So, with note takers and AI automation and voice recognition, a lot of that can be just insto presto magically input. So that's one application. Technology can also amplify your message. So in other words, I can do outreach much faster using technology tools today than I could if I was doing manual dialing or manual emails. So it can automate that. And then it can accelerate how we do this. So what does technology do? It helps us go faster. What we have to be careful of, and let's be clear, the most recent data that I saw is there are something like 7,000 different vendors with sales technology solutions on the market today. So let's be clear. If technology solved the sales productivity problem, it wouldn't be solved. So now the question is, how do we leverage technology to free up more time to do what we need to do, which is have conversations, build trusted relationships, and create opportunities that we can qualify, advance, and win? And there are times that technology becomes what I call a bush to hide behind, because people are waiting for the perfect message or the perfect research or the perfect data. And there's no such thing. We just have to dive in, just like we did back pre-technology. We had to go get the list from our local business journal of the companies, and we had to read the paper on Sundays and find out who's new in the area and who's been promoted in the business journals and all that research, and do things the old-fashioned way. Well, now that can be spoon-fed to us, but we still need to do the outreach and build the relationship. So we find that technology can make you more efficient, but it doesn't do anything necessarily. It's getting there to focus on your effectiveness. And that's where we fit in. We work with organizations to help build the skills and behaviors that will make them more effective when they get those meetings, when they have those opportunities to have conversations, create opportunities, and then move them through the buying process and facilitate when the buyer making a decision to do business with that.
So I want to go back to value, because I believe in what your message is so clear. A lot of salespeople are type A, ADD control freaks.
No.
Guilty as
You're
charged.
kidding.
So could you give me the Reader's Digest version of, it doesn't make any difference what I'm selling, whether it's a candidate to a company, an opportunity to a candidate, a widget, it doesn't make any difference. What do you define as the true value to the listener, regardless of what the product is?
So value, it is an interesting concept. So value always has two components that we believe. There's the logical justification, the business case, the dollars and cents that I can quantify. And if you're a candidate, you're like, is this a good financial arrangement for me, right? Is it the right money? Is it the right package? Do I get the benefits I'm expecting? All that is the logic that we go in to make a decision. But you and I both know that there are many people that turn down good financial offers because somehow it doesn't align to what we call personal value. Maybe I have to move and disrupt my family. Maybe I have to travel to take that opportunity, and I don't want to do that. Maybe I perceive it as not the right company that aligns to my ego of where I want to go. I'm in technology. I don't want to go back to manufacturing or something like that. So it's that personal value, that personal motivation that often is the reason we win or the reason we lose. And many, many sales reps aren't building enough trust to understand what's important to you and under what circumstances would you be motivated to change. And we think that that is a critical component of value. Most sales reps know the value proposition of whatever they're selling. Recruiters too. They know what this opportunity is, and they can present that in a way that might be compelling financially, compelling professionally, and all of that. But if it doesn't line up to the personal motivation of the individual, all is for naught. because all people are motivated, but they're motivated for their own reasons. And that's really critical. And that, the fallacy is that salespeople are coin operated and will only make a decision based on the financial package. Well, that truly is a fallacy. People want to grow, they want opportunity, they want to learn, they want companies that are going to invest in them, they want opportunity for advancement. Or I've talked to people that are like, hey, I'm ready to sunset my career. I don't want a heavy lift anymore. I don't want to do anything that would destroy my credibility or my track record at this point. So I'm going to stay put and ride into the sunset.
Well, gosh, I'm so happy to hear you talk like it. So I really am. Last venue I want to approach is AI. Now I'm an old dog, and it took me a long time to truly understand true value in AI, because what I was learning originally was AI simply regurgitates what a whole bunch of people have put in and comes out with its version of whatever the answer is. And what I'm learning about AI is if you keep it simple, rather than have it build your presentation, rather than have it build your business, because those two things alone take out the genuine person that's trying to build a relationship with you. How would you coach somebody to deal with AI?
So there's a couple of things that I think AI can do really well for salespeople today. Number one is research. I can go in and take, let's say I am calling on, Toyota Motor Company. I can go in and take the links to their financial reports, analyst reports, their annual report, drop it into AI, and say, based on this information, what are the top 5 challenges that this company is dealing with and addressing? And I can get that answer in seconds, as opposed to me pouring through it, trying to figure out those financials and all of that. So it's a starting place for saving time with research. Now, AI hallucinates. So you have to validate and review and understand the sources of where that information came. Just like we learned many years ago, just because it's on the internet or just because it's on the news doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So you have to be careful when AI hallucinates. But on the research and identifying target customers and things like that, it can save a tremendous amount of time. AI can also help craft messages. But I think it's really clear when we see that AI has written something. I think it's a starting point. And then to get ideas, and then you can edit from that. So I'm speaking at an event in June, and I started working on it. And I put in to my AI engine, I'm Julie, you know me, and I'm speaking to this audience on this topic. Give me 10 examples of witty titles for that presentation. And I got that, and then I kind of massaged it. I said, okay, I like 1 and 3. Let's rework those. And so, again, it saves me time in that ideation and content creation, but I'm not delegating 100% of that to AI. So it can help with research. It can help with some of the content and crafting messages. If I write an email to somebody, I'll put that into AI and say, rewrite this into 100 words without losing the context. Now, I might be able to get there with a couple hours of editing. I'm not good at editing my own stuff, but again, it saves a lot of time. So I think those are some those are some of the common applications that we're seeing for AI right now when it comes to sales professionals. The third application that's becoming more and more prevalent is AI as a coach. So AI, give me feedback on how I am executing this call. So whether it is a call transcript or a role play, or I'm interacting with AI as a coach, that is really powerful. And in the business to business setting, we have known for decades that reps who have a good coach outperform those that don't. And the coach was almost always assumed to be the manager. And it's not that managers don't want to coach. They don't have the time, and some of them don't have the expertise because they were high performers that were battlefield promoted, and they don't know how to coach. They just know how to do. It's why Michael Jordan was never a coach. He couldn't teach. He could just do. And he got frustrated when people didn't get it the way he saw it and didn't have maybe the work ethic or the natural talent. So AI as a coach is, I think, the new frontier. And the beauty of it is what takes the longest part for coaching is kind of what we call the assessment step. If you're my manager, you have to ride with me and watch me make a sales call. Or if it's on Zoom, you have to go and listen to that or watch that sales call. And if it's an hour sales call, that's an hour of your time to assess it. And then you have to kind of digest it. Then we have a conversation about it. AI can do that part like that. It can assess and then give some tactical tips and then work to apply and then see if I can iterate and get better. So that is one of the areas that I think is really, really hot right now when it comes to B2B sales is how can AI become your coach, help you see what's in your blind spot, understand where your gaps and weaknesses are, and then help you develop specifically in those areas.
Julie, you're profound. You really are. The messages that you have are just so profound. Last question for you. As a coach, as a mentor, what is one thing that you want to leave this audience with?
How you sell is just as important as what you sell. So all of you are in this HR recruiting, talent management space, and how you engage prospects, and your prospects are both candidates and companies that might be hiring people, is just as important as the capabilities that you can bring to the table. And the foundation or fuel of building trust and selling is the approach you have to learn about the prospect, ask questions, and make connections. Every one of your buyers, whether it's a candidate or it's a company that's going to do an executive search or a talent search, has to answer 4 questions. And the only way you're going to know how they answer those questions is if you ask them questions yourself. The first question is, should I do business with you? Do you have something I need? Do you have the expertise? Do you have the network? Do you have the Rolodex of candidates and the expertise to bring them into my organization? Number 2, is it worth it? Right? I might say, hey, I should do this, but I'm not sure I see the value of paying a recruiter yet. I'm going to try LinkedIn. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to put out an employee bonus program and try to do it in a less expensive way. So everybody has to answer that question. Is it worth it? Number 2, you still can't sell to people who can't buy. So are you having those conversations with the people that have the authority and the ability to make and execute that decision. And in the business to business world, that is more complicated than it's ever been. They don't even know what their internal processes are anymore, let alone we know who they are. And there's more and more people involved. And then the last thing that most of us need to be able to understand from the buyer is, when are you going to buy? Is this a May decision or a December decision? Because that determines how I spend my time to manage that. And for most of us, at some point, we have to predict, hey, this is what's coming in this month. And so if I understand those 4 questions, the only way I can understand that, either they volunteer it or I ask better questions, I can be better at qualifying the opportunities and where I'm spending my time.
Julie, thank you so very much for taking the time today. The messages that you shared with us are so deep, but yet so there, that if we want to be effective, it's about questioning. And to your point, make the conversations about them and less about you. Thank you very, very much for your time today.
My pleasure. This was a ton of fun. Thank you.